Hi, my name is Mark Walker. I'm the editorial director of the FinTech Times, and we're here in Riyadh at 24Fintech. So, there's probably no better person, therefore, to ask about the dynamics within the sort of the region and the different sort of subsectors that we sort of cover and the different use cases that you kind of find within those sort of ventures. How do you look at the market and how do you explain the market as it currently sits?
So the way we think of the market is not by technology or segmenting it in terms of AI versus blockchain versus this versus that, which they're foundational technologies and enablers, very important, but not the way I'd structure the thinking. We structure the thinking in terms of the clients and what it is that they need and the use cases. And I say, at a high level, 4 themes. One of them on the retail side, which is people like to visit banks just about as much as they like dentists, and which is not very much, meaning integrate financial services in the way people live. And so I call this lifestyle and digital banking. That's a theme in its own right. And that's where you put digital banks, banking as a service, open banking, lifestyle apps, and all that. Another theme is SMEs, the forgotten middle. Not very well served by financial services, generally speaking, hugely important, typically 50% or more of the GDP of most of the markets where we operate. So SMEs are about supply chains, trade financing, and the various needs that SMEs have. Across the board, infrastructure, digital assets. Digital assets are here to stay. I'm not saying cryptocurrencies are going up or down. That's not the point. I'm saying they're here to stay, and the rails that they operate on are here to stay. But we'll need a reliable, trustworthy infrastructure at what I'd call institutional grade to operate these, and we've set out to build this. And then last but not least, ESG, which is an acronym that means different things to different people, but I'll mention financial inclusion in the context of financial services, as well as obviously green transition, which is at the core of the business model of some of the ventures we're building at the moment.
And I guess all of those 4 are very prevalent in the Middle East region and North Africa to different extents in different places. What's the sort of, what do you see as the sort of the country dynamics? Do you see one of those particular verticals more present in, say, Egypt as financial inclusion? Or what's your sort of take on that side of things?
It's interesting. Every market is different. And so the last thing you want to do is cut and paste a model and transport it to another place. You can transport technology, you can transport certain things, sometimes even people, but not the business model has to be very market specific because it's about the clients and the feedback they give you. Having said this, if I think of it in terms of the themes I've just mentioned, I think they're eminently applicable to pretty much every market we operate in. So infrastructure might be more or less advanced in one place or another. Regulators might take a particular stance in one place versus another. Ultimately, these things tend to converge. And I would say the regional dynamics are such that the themes we just went through are absolutely relevant and topical in this part of the world.
Yeah, and I guess it's really an interesting region in the fact that there is so many different regulators. When a lot of people will look at, say, somewhere like Europe and think of that as a single market, it isn't a single market. When people look at the GCC, that also isn't a single market. You've got the various dynamics playing in different areas. Do you, when you're looking at ventures, do you hone in on that and think about what's needed in each individual jurisdiction? How do you sort of like find out what's needed in different areas?
Yes. So yes and no. Typically a small venture is very focused and initially very focused on one market, one domestic market. Again, it's not about big market. It's about solving a client problem that is worth solving. And typically that focus is what it takes to build a successful and commercially viable venture anywhere. Now, if we know we're onto something in one part of the world, there's a good chance that we might be onto something in another part of the world. And to my point about not cutting and pasting, but rather attempting to replicate a business, it's about transporting what can be transported, bits and pieces of the IP of the technology, but ultimately going through the same discipline of the business building process, which is build something small, get client feedback, iterate, get feedback again, iterate again, do it as many times as it takes to really make sure you're onto something and you have something that is replicable and scalable, and then go and scale it. And so that process is going to be inevitably very different, whether you're in Egypt, Saudi, UAE, you name it, any part of the world, you have to be very market specific in the way you do things, even though the themes of the the big questions might be very similar.
I mean, I guess we see that quite a bit in the region as well. You look at Kareem, you look at Tabat, you look at these sort of companies, which are similar companies to your Ubers and everything else, but have had to implement in a slightly different way to be able to serve the local dynamics. And I guess in your sort of fourth stream, which was sort of ESG, social inclusion, that type of thing, that really looks even closer into like the dynamics of the local market to see what that market really needs access to.
Yes, it does. When we think, well, you can think of the SME, especially when you go to very small SMEs. You can think of that sector as one for financial inclusion. And as I said, they're not very well served typically in part because if you talk to SMEs and ask them what they really need, they will not say, I need trade financing that is cheaper and structured this way. They will say, help me grow my business. I'm alone and it's hard. And so help me grow my business. And then obviously financial services come as part of that, as opposed to being what you lead with. So it's not product driven, it's driven by their needs. And so you can think of this as a form of financial inclusion. But I'd also mention migrant workers. This is a region which is well known and there are huge communities of migrant workers sending money back and forth to various parts of the world. And that is a huge need, which is super expensive, and we can do a lot better as a society or as a collection of societies to enable this, and obviously we've built ventures to that effect. Mizo in this particular case, which is started in the UAE, but we're intending to roll out to other markets over time. So financial inclusion has a lot of aspects from which technology enables. It wouldn't have been possible only a few years ago on old and conventional rails or without using data science in the way we use it today. So there's a number of enablers that make it possible. And again, going back to what is the use case? Is it a problem worth solving? Is there a societal need where financial institutions, including banks, should be expected to come in and do their job.
Yeah, and I guess from one of the other ones we talked about, where you talked about sort of SME financing and various things like that. In my sort of thoughts and experience, I've seen that as a sign of a maturing market, which may or may not be true. So in Europe, for example, we had a lot of consumer-based fintechs to start with, and then it moved much more into a B2B. Do you think that is the sign of this region maturing, or do you think it's a question of leapfrogging, whereby they're just getting to that problem a lot quicker because they know about it a bit more?
I actually think both coexist at all times, pretty much everywhere. I think you have an element of B2C initially, a lot of venture capital money, a lot of the headlines have been about indeed consumer financing as well as payments. Payments is by and large has been the biggest recipient over time of fintech investments. But there is obviously a B2B as well as a B2B2C segment, which has been overlooked at the beginning and is caught up in most markets. I actually think they're both required and both can and should coexist in most markets over time. Yeah.
I know you're a busy man, so I'm not going to take up too much more of your time, but final question. Obviously, we're here at the very first 24Fintech. What are your thoughts of the venue? What do you think the day has been for you?
I'm impressed. I'm impressed by the venue, by the organization, by the fact we're all here and having these conversations. I would say, to me, this is the sign of the methodical build of an ecosystem. An ecosystem is essentially what it takes to have a vibrant market of startups, innovation, not just fintechs, but including fintechs. So it takes venture capital, it takes private equity capital, growth capital, it takes different forms and sources of capital, it takes academia, sources of talent, as well as advisors, professors, and all that. It takes journalists, obviously, as part of the community. It takes the founders. I should have mentioned them first. Without founders, nothing happens. And so that ecosystem, the bits and pieces of an ecosystem, is what it takes. I would add regulators in the context of fintech and the engagement they have and the stance they start to provide as they build up the regulatory infrastructure, so to say, for what we're doing. So this conference is in some ways the expression of that ecosystem that is methodically building. And that is very impressive and very encouraging.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for spending the time with me speaking on the FinTech Times.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.